What is moralistic therapeutic deism? It is a complete fiction conjured up in 2005 by a religious studies professor named Christian Smith, and which Smith used to describe the current religious trend among American teenagers. The phrase is misleading for several reasons, and is obviously calculated to throw scorn on the beliefs of these young people, but it employs tactics of deception to arrive at this goal.
Indeed. Smith interviewed thousands of teenagers, including plenty of 15-year-olds, and used those interviews to cobble together a set of beliefs attributable to these kids, like the idea that there's a God who watches over us, that wants us to be good and fair and nice to each other, that wants us to be self-fulfilled, that only interferes when we really need it, and that lets good people into heaven when they die. So why does Smith choose to call this set of beliefs moralistic therapeutic deism?
The first problem is in calling it moralistic. Why not just moral? It is as though Smith thinks that goodness and fairness are not really moral qualities. This is not surprising given the trend of modern evangelical Christianity to prize hatred of certain groups, as well as arrogance, avarice and the lust for power. To these Christians, the true teachings of Jesus mean nothing, and the only things that are good and fair are those that bring them more social and political power and control over others.
The next thing Smith says is that moralistic therapeutic deism is therapeutic, meaning it makes people feel better about themselves. Well, don't all religions sell themselves as making you feel better about yourself for belonging to them? I mean, that's why a congregant can go to have a chat with a priest or a rabbi or other kind of cleric to get guidance on what they're doing. People want someone to tell them they have God's stamp of approval, so they can sleep better at night. Jesus might have liked that, but modern Christianity doesn't want you to sleep better at night. Instead, it has become a sickness that wants you to lay awake feeling that you are a horrible person, no matter how good your actions, and that there is a narrow-minded and merciless God who punishes good people. The Christian God is even depicted as one who punishes Christians for following any wrong interpretation among the thousands of contradictory interpretations of their own religious texts.
The most laughable deceit here is to call this deism. The very core of deism, and variations such as PanDeism, is the belief that the existence and nature of the Creator can be determined by the application of reason alone. But Smith makes no reference whatsoever of this. So far as Smith says, these kids have not made any kind of rational study of the universe. They have not drawn conclusions from that sort of examination. Instead, like most religious people, these kids are just repeating what they have been taught without making any critical reflection upon it, the very opposite of deism.
Deism also requires the rejection of revelations, such as those in the Bible or the Quran. But Smith gives us no findings about this either. These kids aren't rejecting their religious texts. They get the basic message, but they're just ignorant of the current popular interpretations of these texts. The final point of deism is that the Creator is a non-interfering type. This is also not at all consistent with what Smith presents. What Smith describes is not just moralistic, but actually moral, and it is no more therapeutic than any other religion. Since it is not deism, it is really just another morality-based theism. But Smith bills himself as a theologian, so he should know what deism means, and should be held accountable for using it in an untruthful way, whether he is lying, or just a fool.
Finally, we get to the meat of the matter. Smith claims that this moral therapeutic deism is a threat to Christianity itself. He even likens it to an incubus, a type of soul-sucking demon. Why does he express such vitriol towards his own phony, made-up religion? Probably because this distraction focuses people on things other than the modern Christian doctrines of greed, and hatred, and intolerance. Well, if anything moves people away from those so-called Christian values, and towards the values which Jesus himself championed, being good, and fair, and nice to one another, that would seem to be a pretty good thing, even if it has a contradictory and made-up name.
Yes, that's for sure.